So then we are coming to our next talk. It is Gabriel Lamug Nañawa. He will give us a testimonial of his work, short introduction of him. After his formation in philosophy and theology as Jesuit, he was sent to Cambodia for 17 years, mainly helping persons with disability, local poor communities, and working with indigenous forest communities on ecological issues. At the present, he is coordinator of the Reconciliation with Creation Network of the Jesuit Conference of Asia Pacific, while also serving as the province assistant for ecological justice of the Philippine province of the Society of Jesus. And he is also a member of the formation team for the scholastics of Loyola House of Studies in the Philippines. So thank you very much, Gabriel, that you give us a little testimony of your work and your engagement.
Good noon to everyone. When I'm asked these days, where are you from? What do you do? And I say I'm involved with formation work and also with ecology for the province and also for the conference. That is true, but that's I've been back to the Philippines for the past just around 2 years, less than 2 years. And for 17 years before that, I was missionary. So at this sharing, testimony, communication, I'd speak more along those lines as missionary and a story about Cambodia and my reflections about that situation. So I entitled it this way, Alienation and Reconciliation in the First Week, a story of land, trees, and community in Cambodia. So I have maybe one eye on the spiritual exercises, another eye on Cambodia, maybe another eye on ecology. So just those three things put together. This is a photo of Angkor Wat. I don't know if people have been to Cambodia, to Siem Reap, and it's symbolic of the country of the Kingdom of Cambodia. And I'll show later, it even comes out in their flag. So I have 4 parts in this presentation. So beginning with love and kinship, a larger perspective, our desolation, alienation from ourselves, others, creation, and God. And finally, God's mercy and the path to consolation, mainly to reconciliation with creation. So firstly, to begin, we begin with love and kinship. Many times people, when they enter into this conversation about ecological conversion, and the first questions are what to do? What are we to do? How are we to fix this, fix our situation? And just to situate where Cambodia is, as we begin the story, it's right here. I don't know the longitude. I don't know if we're really on the other side of the world, but it feels like that. And we're neighbors with Vietnam, Thailand, and Laos. Australia's over here, India. And this is the flag of Cambodia. And it's the only flag that has a built structure as part of its identity on a flag. And that's Angkor Wat. And it's impressive. I read somewhere that it is, I don't know if it's accurate, 4 times the land area of the Vatican. I'm not sure, but it's an impressive monument. And one of the first maybe feelings as I met Cambodia was about its beauty, about its beauty, and about forest. I was not I was more captivated by the sea. My emotional engagement was with the sea before Cambodia, and then during my stay, I there developed a love for forest, and as I saw other, like, this is another temple beside Angkor Wat, Taprom. This was built in 1186, and after the Angkor Empire fell, it was overgrown with the forest, with jungle, and so many parts of the temples were like the trees grew over them, grew on them, and this is a kind of fig tree. But my favorite tree, actually, I developed a favorite tree in Cambodia, and it is this tree, chutil. The Latin name is Dipterocarpus alatus. It's a tall tree, 20, 30 meters. I found it. I've never seen it in, I don't know. I've never seen it in the Philippines, in Manila. But they were there. They were around the temples, and they were in the forests, and I found them majestic and very big, very tall. And there was I would say an attraction to its beauty and an effective engagement, love, and maybe that's my first point. Not to start, well, what to do in this conversation, but to be firstly engaged with beauty, gratitude, and love. And this second paragraph, because in Genesis, the first chapter, we get to the point where God says man was made in God's likeness, image and likeness, and dominion will follow there shortly. And many times we refer to that as meaning stewards, that we are stewards. But then I gravitated less towards steward and more towards kinship. And I think that's something that's needed, especially at this time, an emphasis on kinship with creation, that can form our basic identity, that our closeness of our relationship to creation may be the primary definition of who we are in this world. So love and kinship. And so what we did, we were in a school for people with disabilities who were coming from war. There was the Khmer Rouge, and there was civil war for many years. And our school was mainly for former soldiers who were injured by war. And together we set up a tree nursery. One of the first things we did was to set up a tree nursery, because of this effective engagement with the forest. And we planted everywhere, in Buddhist pagodas, in vacant spaces in the park. But over time, we met this community. It was an indigenous community, Kui indigenous community. It's central northern Cambodia. And we did nothing for their organization. There were no NGO, no government initiative formed them together. They were a community already, and their task was they took it upon themselves to protect the largest lowland forest in Cambodia, central Cambodia. And we partnered with them. We they asked us if there were portions that were deforested by logging or by fire. We targeted those places, but always together with the community. So love, kinship, and love. I discovered yesterday that I come through the Oikos gate. And so what follows will be a few graphs. And for me, this is Antonio Guterres, who already in 2018 spoke of climate as a defining issue of our time. And we are at a defining moment. We face a direct existential threat, let there be no doubt about the urgency of the crisis. So for me, when I heard this some years ago, I felt impressed. It made an impression, and about also the magnitude and the urgency of the matter. And then I saw other graphs. This is just a graph which came out, if I'm not mistaken, last month, and in May. And it's this is just 80 years. The x-axis is 80 years. This is temperature change, and here is encircled the 1.5 that scientists say we should not cross. And yet, so each vertical line is a year of temperature, and each dot is a day. So that's 1 year, and you can see each year in some going up. And I put this here because the first 4 days, there were 4 days in last February which already breached 2.0. So that's and the trajectory of it all is I don't know, it makes me anxious. This is from The Guardian. It just says that they contacted the 843 scientists of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, and 380 responded. And one of the questions was, how high will global heating go? And 1.5 is here. Only 6 people said maybe we'll stay below 1.5, but over 77% say we are headed for 2.5 and beyond. So for me, it causes, speaks of urgency, especially this is one of them who says that it's the biggest human threat we have faced, etc. I just put this here because of this part that says in this continual rise that maybe there's a qualitative shift in our climate system that's happening, maybe already. Like it's not a steady rise, but maybe there's a tipping point that we're crossing, and I don't know what else happens after that, but yes, cause for great concern. This comes from the statue, and again, superlative words for me that it's the greatest threat, imbalance in the relationship with the environment, impossible to just have technological proposals, and radical changes are needed. In my Jesuit life, I feel we have encountered this word, or we like using this word. We need radical changes, but I don't recall undergoing any radical changes in my life so far as a Jesuit, and yet yes. And Laudato Si was, yes, it's from roots are in a technocratic paradigm, power, not being able to know how to use it well, misguided modern anthropocentrism. And we've heard also as a root, also a socioeconomic political system model that somehow magnifies our effect. And so as we put these three things together, power, anthropocentrism, and maybe engulfed in a system, in a global way, yes, these are operative. But in a local way, as we go back to Cambodia, power, anthropocentrism, androcentrism, and the system of corruption, of government, this is what they face, the community that we have partnered with. And what has impressed me is how they still pursue. They still go up to now on patrols. They go into the forest for days, for a week, looking for illegal activity. This is one situation where they found 3 chainsaws. They confiscate this from people who are engaged in illegal logging. They say the average in every 5-day period that they go into the forest, they get 8 chainsaws. The maximum is 16. Imagine going to the forest for 5 days, finding 16 chainsaws that they collect. Yes, they give to the Ministry of Environment, but then they don't know where that goes from there. They say they can find it again the next week. It's you again. I saw you last week. And also this situation of power and centrism is not good. Does not work well for activists. This is a man named Chut Buti, and I knew him, and we were colleagues because the community of people who work in the forest are not very many, and in meetings we will see the same persons. And he was one of the very vocal, brave activists who spoke out against the government very, very courageously, and he was shot in 2012. It's one of those things because I remember where I was when I heard news about his death. And when people ask me about working in ecology in Cambodia, it's one of the characteristics of that is it's very easy to get into trouble, very easy to get on the bad side of the government, very easy. That's things that people who do this work are faced with. Third, I was reflecting on desolation, and I went to alienation, and because given maybe the magnitude of the global situation and also these things that happen in our forests, maybe it's reasonable to act decisively and with intention. Maybe it's reasonable, but then much of our lifestyles remain unchanged, unaffected. And I just listed 3 reasons here, but there are more. And A is that there's so many things happening, in so many different places, so many different issues that it's not it's impossible to get a good grasp of everything at the same time. And also with letter B, because we don't usually think that they're related in terms of a system. When we look at deforestation, we address deforestation. We look at overfishing, we address overfishing. But we don't so much think that there are other issues that are involved and that are related with one another. And a shifting baseline that when we enter into a situation, we see how it begins. We get the sense that this change just happens in my 10 years or so, but then we don't consider so much that in the previous generation, much change has happened already. And we have different starting points, and we are not aware of how big the system is and how much it has changed. And all of these combined with maybe increasing cities and our system of how we do economy and politics, for me, is an ever-increasing wedge between us and creation. So I went into alienation as a core source of desolation. And for me, the story of Adam and Eve, especially after the eating of the fruit, and then God says, "What is this that you have done? What is this that you have done?" And when we dare to think of ourselves as much greater than we were meant to be, and causing our own expulsion from the garden, for me, that's a story of our alienation from ourselves, from others, from God, and from creation. And that story is relevant to our situation at the moment, and of not belonging, of being apart, not only from God, but from human and natural communities. I put this photo of Zach Bush. He's an endocrinologist, but he's also he studies also planetary health, and he has this just an explanation which he calls truth fractals. I think fractals is a mathematical term meaning that the dimensions of in a small scale remain the same in a big scale. And he was talking about how human cells, when they are in the body, when they are when the relationship with other cells are compromised, and this group of cells are isolated, alienated from the rest, then it starts its journey towards being a malignant effect, towards cancer, of being cancerous for the body. And then he looked at also the youth who were involved in shootings, mass shootings in schools. And when he looked at their backgrounds, he found that their family and friends relations are also not there, and a sense of isolation makes them more easily radicalized. And then he jumps to maybe on the species level and how our alienation, our distance from creation, also has made us more destructive, or not knowing how to treat creation. So again, that this theme of alienation and isolation runs through. In Cambodia, I think there's a sense of alienation comes from the land also, mainly because there was war, and a big part of war was the landmines. The different factions laid landmines, but then when the war ended, the landmines persisted. No one took them out. No one knew where they were now. And there was no map. And so it transitioned from soldiers who were being maimed by the landmines to children, because now women and children were free to move around more. And more, there were children who were being victimized by the landmines. And this created a kind of an opposite of familiarity and attraction and love to land, the opposite. It put fear and distance to land. And finally, as to look at consolation, maybe that's what reconciliation is, reconciliation as a path to consolation. So if our desolation is alienation, maybe our consolation lies somewhere in reconciliation. And in the general congregation, beginning 2008, there is this call of mission of justice and reconciliation in those relations to God, with one another, and with creation. And I find them also in the universal apostolic preferences of how the first UAP is reconciliation with God and ourselves. The UAP on youth and marginalized refer to those with others, and with a UAP on our common home, with that of reconciliation with creation. And this word, ecological conversion, I place this as a kind of manifestation of reconciliation with creation. As far as I know, it was St. John Paul II who mentioned this phrase in 2001, and he defined it in an audience as ecological conversion has made humanity more sensitive to the catastrophe to which it has been heading. And then fast forward to Laudato Si, Pope Francis mentions this in paragraph 217. Ecological conversion is whereby the effects of our encounter with Jesus become evident in our relationship with the world around us. The definitions are for me, I needed more maybe concrete signs. So I was looking, what are signs or indicators that one is on the way, one is on the path, one is on the way towards ecological conversion. And maybe these four are indicative. So maybe if there is, when we it's that a transition or transform or move towards regarding creation or creatures from object, we call them natural resources, to subject where meaningful relations can be formed. When we move from an emphasis on independence and towards interdependence, we hear that very often. Interdependence for me on a biological sense is like the food web of how really everything is related to everything else. But even on a relational way, our own identity is formed through interdependence. Emphasizing more the communal and the individual. I come from the East, so I have this caricature of the West that is more that puts more emphasis on I have rights than maybe in an indigenous community that would emphasize more I have obligations to the community. So individual to community. And then from taking to giving. Taking for me, because I think much of our relationship with creation is extractive, mining, fishing, deforestation, to giving. If we to transition to give without, even without the idea of investing, like we don't give to take at a later time, but just to give a sense of reciprocity because we have received so much. In a conversation with Ramon Bautista, who's our spiritual guru of the exercises in the Philippine province, and I asked him about ecological conversion. And he said it is a spiritual conversion, and there's no way through conversion without an emptying of oneself, a changing of perspective, of values, of our way of living, loving, and relating. So it's not more of the same, it's not tweaks, just minor changes, but he says it's an old way of life has to be surrendered in order to make space for and to receive a new paradigm. I'm good with time. I think this is my last slide. Thank you. So with reconciliation, this is a practice which I met in Cambodia. It's called the ordination of trees. And it began in northern Thailand. It's a Buddhist practice, and there was a small group of monks in northern Thailand called the ecology monks. And they started wrapping their saffron robes around trees as the main purpose is conservation, that it may be a deterrent for the loggers who are also Buddhist. And if they, because monks are respected very much in Buddhist society, and if they see that trees are also made holy by the monks, maybe it might serve as a deterrent for loggers. So that started in northern Thailand, and we took it, or it came to Cambodia, and we embraced it. And so sometimes monks would come with us to the forest, sometimes none. So sometimes they're Buddhist prayers, sometimes they're animist prayers, sometimes there's Christian prayers and Catholic prayers. But it's a way of, for me, being like blessing the land, being of healing, it's an act of reconciling, being reconciled with the land. And I'll end with this this sentence because it was a conversation with one of the Kui people, and when we asked him about why do you do what you do, and what keeps you going, and it's not because of a job or a project, it's because of love, of community, of kinship. And in the end, he says, we love the forest. We love the forest as much as our own lives. And in that, inherent in that, is a sense that we're willing to sacrifice livelihood, life, for what they love. think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Gabriel, for your thoughts and for your testimonial, what you have given us. As we did it before, also now 1 minute of silence of taking a dose.